Hey, Jim Hart here. Interesting comments by the same commenter, so I thought maybe I would respond to them and let's see how you identify with this person or you don't or what you think. Please, subscribe to the channel first. Hey, if you haven't already, but leave a comment, if you relate or you don't relate, or what's your experience been as maybe someone who's recycling a relationship with somebody with BPD, or you are now the ex of the BPD, but you still have hope, but you're in that horrible place of you've lost yourself and you're lost right now and everything hurts and you can't concentrate, the cognitive dissonance and the rumination. So on a video I did, BPD relationships, the cost of loving a borderline is loss of yourself. This commenter says, I don't think there's enough videos for those of us who fought back and reacted in ways we never thought we could. I have never gotten so mad so often at someone I loved in my life. I'm not a perfect human being, says the commenter, and I have my flaws, but damn, ... I've been replaced already and left with the trauma of acting like a complete a-hole, I'll just say they spelled the word out, to a 5'6", 135-pound BPD woman for 2 years. My brain reacted like I was being assaulted physically. I felt cornered constantly, and I became a total self-righteous... I'm trying to substitute a word here. I became a total self-righteous, let's say PR instead of D-I-C-K, okay? Just don't want to speak that way to her. So he became a total self-righteous PR, right, with D-I-C-K, is what the commenter actually said, the D-I-C-K, to her. It's so weird, says the commenter, that I feel guilty for not taking it, but still staying. Well, this is another side, or maybe another experience, of how people with codependency can be involved in a codependent trauma response to a person with BPD in what, don't forget, are betrayal bonded, unhealthy bonded relationships. If they're not really bonds, people with BPD don't really attach. And then again, to make it not necessarily fair, but to look at both sides of this equation, we have to also include the reality that a lot of people with codependency, not everybody's the same with codependency either, but will have this extreme reactivity to what the person with BPD ends up doing, how that feels, how, yes, they are hurting you, but even more to the point, that's really important. The more to the point, what you need to think about now, or if you're still recycling the relationship, is that, yeah, they're hurting you, and they're hurting you maybe sometimes knowingly, maybe a lot of the times not knowingly. They're doing a whole lot of things involve their repetition compulsion cycles, which come from the unconscious, but yeah, they can include you in the middle of it, and they're really coming at you, they're really confusing you, they're really hurting you, and they're not seeing or hearing you, so they're not really concerned with your feelings at all, are they? Because they're right fighting. It's like whatever you say, I feel this way because that happened. The ways that unfortunately people with BPD, especially untreated, are just so confusing to people when they don't know what BPD is, so confusing after you know, and crazy making. This commenter, with all that said, this commenter says, I don't think there's enough videos for those of us who fought back and reacted in ways we never thought we could. Some could say that involves codependent reactive abuse, and it might rise to that, and that has all to do with how you're being not only hurt by the person with BPD, not only not understood, and but you're also trying to change them. You're trying to get them to stop what they're doing, understandably, but you're trying to change who they in essence really aren't, because they have no self, lack of self, loss of self, arrested emotional development in early childhood. So they can be brilliant with IQ, but they're really low on emotional intelligence. And so they got to do what they got to do is what I'm trying to say, not minimizing, not apologizing for what many people with BPD do to their partners and those closest, and how much that hurts and traumatizes and you lose yourself. There can be reactive abuse. And that involves not only what the borderline is doing to you, how they're really impacting you negatively, traumatically, etc., but also what they're triggering in you. Because this trauma bond, the betrayal bond, is a two-sided dynamic once these relationships get going. And after, especially, in the beginning too, but after the idealization phase and the first pretty significant or major splits of evaluation by the borderline, and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't who I thought he or she was. Why are they acting like this? Why are they treating me like this? And some people then, from their own childhood woundedness or trauma with codependency, might be a little more severe, could be like this commenter and really fighting back and really reacting. And to a point, there can be a lot of fighting back, a lot of arguing back and forth that is, a little abusive both ways. But sometimes people get physical in reactive abuse, which we can't sanction either. Sometimes people really get into a whole lot of verbal abuse. I mean, people with codependency trying to get the borderline to wake up and hear you. But what is all that fighting about for those that do fight back every step of the way in these relationships? Well, it's your first big sign that, like the commenter says at the end, it's so weird that I feel guilty for not taking it, but still staying. Well, in the way that this commenter phrases that, maybe what the commenter doesn't realize is they were still taking it. They were still being impacted by it. They were still, to a degree or other, putting up with the trauma they were suffering. When he says, weird that I feel guilty for not taking it, but staying. But he was taking it, and he was fighting back against it. Because it is there, and borderline abuse and borderline crazy making, it's there and it's impacting you. So whether you're fighting back or not, you're trying to always reason and rationalize with them, which doesn't work either. You're still, quote, as this commenter would say, taking it. So some people with codependency in a, betrayal bonded relationship or situationship with somebody with BPD or the patterns of suspected BPD, BPD untreated, BPD not well enough treated, they will definitely fight back. But whether people fight back directly, assertively, aggressively, they're in fight-flight. It's codependent fight-flight. You're being wounded and you're being hurt and you're losing yourself. And it probably reminds you, or at some level, or a wounded inner child part of you at some level, is definitely re-experiencing something to do with a parent from your childhood. I mean, it's all different for all different people. So some people with codependency will go to fight-flight, and they will fight back, and all kinds of what that means. And sometimes it even might get physical on the part of the BPD partner. Well, or the person with BPD as well. But the thing is, most codependents, I shouldn't say most, but a high percentage of people with codependency in these relationships, they're not all the same or anything, codependents or the relationships. The dynamics have moving pieces that are different according to each codependent person's patterns, which are unconscious, and each borderline person's patterns of repetition compulsion cycles and impulsivity and not seeing you and not hearing you and not being able to attach to you and not being able to love you. So the thing is, this commenter is talking about being in fight-flight and really reacting. So he thinks he didn't take it, but he was taking it. That's where the reaction came from. What was actually happening, because he chose to stay, so he was still taking it, still being affected by it, still being impacted by it. A lot of people with codependency will be reactive, but it's more of a fawn or freeze type of thing, or a mixture of a bit of fawning. In other words, you're walking on the eggshells, you're trying to make it all okay, you're trying to watch your words, you're fawning, you're going like, okay, I hear you, and you're really upset, what can I do to make it better, like it's going to be okay, like I don't want to set you off anymore kind of thing. Can be a combination of fawn and a little bit of fight, but the way that a lot of people with codependency are, quote, fighting back with the borderline, unlike this commenter, it's more passive-aggressive. It's not necessarily by raising your voice or yelling or anything. That might happen sometimes. But it's often that you're trying to use your logic, especially men. I'm not saying women are logical. Non-cluster B women are not illogical necessarily. But a lot of men really stress when I'm working with clients. They really stress that they're trying to like, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. I got it. So you're asking constantly like, what just happened? Why? Like, what? I just feel this way. How come now you want to end it? You like doing this, doing that. All these iterations of situations in argument and in conflict, drama and chaos that keep you on that roller coaster and keep you guessing all the time. Many people have a sort of a fun combination, maybe fight, but the fight part comes out with you trying to reason with them. And it does not work. Many people think they've reasoned some kind of a repair or mini closure or some kind of closure to an episode with the borderline, or had the borderline having an episode, splitting, devaluing, yelling, screaming at you, or giving you the silent treatment, whatever may be the case. But the point is, there is no repair. Because no matter how much logic, no matter how much even some people at BPD will understand you to some degree in a fleeting way intellectually, that's about it. And it doesn't go into their emotions. And here's the thing you got to know as a codependent. If you're still doing this and you're recycling relationships and it's on, off, it's up, down, it's the roller coaster of the chaos and the drama and you're losing yourself, what you really need to know is that you really do need to leave and you really do need to take care of yourself. And why do so many people stay? Has a lot to do with something from childhood, woundedness in childhood that's obviously often unconscious for people with codependency, but not all people with codependency. But the drive is so strong to try to fix it and to try to change it. And the thing is, you're trying to change another person. And a person with BPD or all the patterns of BPD, or maybe you think they have BPD, NPD, whatever the case. And the point is, the only person you can change is you. And so, this is where I talk about that people with codependency have their own repetition compulsion cycles, which is a part of you getting triggered and unconsciously not realizing how, a young part or wounded inner child in you is feeling. And so something is unconsciously happening there that builds your reactions often. But many people will use that rationalization. But you're trying to change someone else to be who you thought they were, to be who you need them to be, and all the while criticizing. And people are vilifying borderlines all over the place. And I'm not saying we should excuse their behavior or their abuse or anything like that. I'm not a BPD apologist. But people with codependency don't realize how much you are a part of this dynamic. No, you are not driving the dynamic. You're reactionary, you're reacting, you're trying to change and fix somebody so you will feel okay and this relationship will work out. Now, if you stop and think about that for a few minutes, stop thinking about the borderline, even if you're recycling situation relationships. Just stop and think about what you're doing. You might not know why, but you got to stop what you're doing somehow. You got to start learning more about what's going on for you versus, well, it's because the borderline did this, did that, said that. It may well have a lot to do with that. The commenter reacted in ways that it thought they never could. I think it's a man. He thought he never could. Gotten so mad at someone that they say they loved in their life. Well, this is the other heartbreaking thing. You might feel like you love them. Then, split to devaluation, the rocky road, the roller coaster, the chaos, the drama. You're losing yourself. Now you're fighting really hard to change this person because in the midst of all those dynamics, you just can't imagine that there's anything inside of you that's contributing to those dynamics. I don't mean you're at fault for what the borderline does. No, you're not. When he says, I got so mad so often at this person I loved. Well, but these people aren't the people that you fall in love with, right? Because they present, as people-pleasing, idealization stage, etc., which they don't really see you in, and they're not really valuing you the way that it seems, because it's their projective identification that starts their search for identity through you, even in idealization. So it feels great, and they seem to be just all about you, but no, you're still representing a good, maybe never had object other parent representation in idealization. Codependent love is compromised, and that has something to do with codependency for many people, but also how can you really be loving somebody who isn't really there? And then, the commenter said that he'd been replaced and left with the way that he acted abusively in a complete a-hole way to a 5'6", 135-pound BPD woman for 2 years. Well, I don't think it matters. I mean, it matters for who people are attracted to and things, I understand. But I don't think it matters unless he's talking about that he got physical, then it might matter. But listen, if you've done that, and if that's what this commenter is referring to about, really stressing that his ex was 5'6", 135 pounds, and obviously a woman, maybe there was some physicality there. And the thing is, it's not right. There's a way to understand it. And I'm out here to work with anybody that resonates with me on any facets of all of this healing. And then if you're recycling or you can't go no contact, you just can't stop thinking of it, you're suffering so much. So maybe that's what the commenter's alluding to. I don't know. So he said, my brain reacted like I was being assaulted physically. Well, maybe I should do more on this, because when you're under stress, when you're confused, when you're losing yourself, when you're being negatively impacted by somebody you're trying to give to, take care of, love, rescue, fix, and change, the brain, it's not all about the brain. It's also human emotions, etc. And what your thoughts are, and then negative core beliefs being triggered from your childhood probably, that you might not be consciously aware of. But with all of that said, people will always say, my brain felt like, or borderline say, my brain made me do it. Not quite that simplistic. But yes, the fight-flight response to a borderline, or the fawn kind of sort of fight, which is the using of rationality, the trying to get them back, the maybe saying things you never dreamt you'd say, or just trying to kind of treat them in some of the ways they're treating you because you think maybe that'll wake them up. Well, this is like, I don't think there's not enough videos on this, because the thing is, everybody experiences it differently, and this really needs to go into session work and deeper work. So people need to seek somebody out to work with on this. And, this person's carrying around this guilt 2 years later and demeaning themselves and being really critical. So an inflamed internal critic in most people with codependency, because you can't win with the borderline. And no matter what you've done or you didn't do, never mind what they say you did or you didn't do, but whatever you perceive that somehow you failed, or you couldn't do it right enough, or you couldn't make the relationship work, you're still losing, but you want to be with this person, but you don't know who they are. It's a big friggin' mess, to just put it mildly. People, you've got to start getting out of these messes. And the best way to do that, actually, no matter where you are, in any relationship type with somebody with BPD who's impacting you anywhere near, or even not as severely as this commenter, you really need to work with somebody and start to work on your own process of what's happening. Why are you staying? Why are you putting up with it or taking it, like the commenter said? Because whether you're fighting back or whatever, your brain is going to mount a defense. And this is where we see the freeze, fawn, or the flight, fight, those 4F responses. And there's another one I've seen out there called flop, but I won't talk about that right now. It's essentially not that different from fawning. But where do those 4 trauma response reactions come from? Well, yeah, the reptilian part of the human brain. So it's in the amygdala. It's got to do with the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. And it's the HPA axis. And your brain could respond literally to a 5'6" or a 5 foot, 100-pound borderline woman. And if you're a really bigger guy, like you're tall, you're muscular, whatever the case, well, your brain could really respond as if that smaller physical BPD woman, or an average, say, size man with a BPD woman, and maybe they're, nobody's really way more muscular, although men are usually stronger. Your brain is going to respond like that. Okay, let's stick with the woman. The small BPD woman, she's short, she's thin, she's your ideal, she's gorgeous. But your brain and your HPA axis, which is trying to protect you, The reptilian brain doesn't really help us protect ourselves in modern times because it will perceive that that small stature physicality of that borderline woman is a lion about to eat you. That's what's really happening inside the brain and deep inside your psychology, which then triggers other things from your childhood. There's the unconscious repetition compulsion cycles. And I'll just end by saying this. Ask yourself, why do you think that you need to change somebody so that you can be okay, so that you could get seen or heard and this could work out, when it's already chaos, drama, and a roller coaster? It's codependent denial of what's really happening to you. And more to the point, for so many people, it also mirrors what you might not be consciously aware of, or something happened in your childhood, but it will mirror something that really wounded a part of you in childhood. And so now you're re-experiencing something in codependency, which isn't the same or to the same depth and degree, but it's important to understand and to work on and to heal, as what people with BPD are constantly re-experiencing in their unconscious repetition compulsion cycles, which drives so much of their pattern behavior that so many of you always think is on purpose. Because often it's not on purpose. And it's not about you. And it's not about the here and now. It's about what they're triggered to. And then people with codependency are triggered to other things in their own way, not as primally. But that's why these are trauma bonds. There's no attachment on the part of the BPD. There's anxious or fearful or avoidant or some mix like that for people with codependency. There really isn't much room in a trauma bonded relationship with a person with BPD for the codependent or the BPD to really know what's love in this relationship. And yet, yes, many of you out there, you may have a bit of a different experience with this, but I've had many, many clients saying, I know she loved me. And she told me millions of times she loved me. It's not really a gauge of love, actually. That's oversaying it. But think about how they treat you. Think about what happens when they're triggered, all their issues, and they devalue, they split and devalue you. Now they're after you, and you can't do anything right. And it's not really you. It's object other parent that they are experiencing you as. But you're the one there taking it, right? You're the one there getting hurt. So the important part of all this is that people recognize your codependency took you there somehow unconsciously, and your codependency is what's making it impossible to leave. And so you're stuck, and people stay, and then they beat themselves up for that later in the process. I know I've worked with so many clients. They're like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm an idiot. I stayed. Blah, blah, blah. And it's that internal critic again. Because when you have codependency, even if it's only like slightly and you don't relate to everything, you only need one codependent trait that is strong enough to ruin your life by pursuing these relationships, and you don't consciously understand why. Oh, where the sex is so great. And, everything was so great in the beginning. But then all of a sudden it isn't. And the shift and the shock and what that does to people, the trauma of that shift, of like, you keep trying, among many other things that you might not be consciously aware of, to get that person back to the idealization phase. And there was nothing real about the idealization phase, except that it left you feeling fantastic. And I've always said, people with codependency have a voracious emotional hunger to be seen and to be heard, to be valued. You, with codependency, need your validation and other needs met externally, not to the same degree for the same reasons, but similarly to the borderline, but not to the same degree. Nor do you go about it as a codependent, most people, the same way as somebody with BPD. So I hope that helps. Because reacting to them and reacting to them and reacting to them is only a measure of how damaged you're being, how much you're losing yourself. And please be aware of this. Please hear this right now, even if you don't want to hear it and you don't want to believe it and you get really mad at me. You are trying, whether you consciously fully are aware of this or not, you're trying to change another human being. Maybe back to who you thought they were. But you're trying to change them and you're sacrificing yourself and you're losing yourself. And many people have all kinds of stress reactions, trauma, and beyond from these relationships. And I'm seeing more and more clients now who are having unaliving issues, unaliving urges, impulses, and or unaliving sort of ideation. And the thing is, this is impacting, I'm talking about the non-BPD partner now, talking about the adult child of the borderline, talking about if you have a friend with BPD or you're the favorite person, all these relationship types with these people that unfortunately don't know who they are and have all of this pattern behavior and relational difficulty, including that they cannot make any repair whatsoever in a relationship with you because what they weren't able to get through early childhood to develop in a way that would mean they wouldn't have BPD or all the patterns of it could be diagnosed, then they would have different skills, wouldn't they? And they would know how to relate, but they don't. And they can be communication nightmares, and there's no repair. The only thing you can do as a codependent, and it doesn't necessarily mean only romantic relationships, adult children of BPD, like I said, favorite person is someone with BPD, you're enabling, you're in the way, you're still not getting any of your needs met. There's nothing mutual or reciprocal with people with all the patterns of BPD or who've been diagnosed with BPD or had some treatment, but they haven't had enough treatment. And let me just state again, people with BPD are not going to get better in a month, 2 months, 5 months, a year or two of DBT. It takes 8 to 16 years to really for them to find a self, to build back a meaningful existence within first, to be able to then learn how to relate to others and know the difference between self and others. And people with codependency know the difference between self and other, but it gets blurred in all the chaos and the drama of riding the roller coaster. So I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you. And if you really want to talk about why you're hurting so much and what you can do, and even if you want to talk about how can you keep trying to make this work, we can talk about whatever you want, wherever you're starting from. The main thing I would encourage people today, if you relate to anything I said or you're going, I don't think I do, but you need to reach out to someone. If I resonate with you, I'm out here to work with you. Start there, wherever you're at, because these relationships don't work out. And yes, codependents, non-borderline people lose their health, their mental health, and sometimes their lives to these, quote, relationships. You need to get out. Take care.